Welcome back to Women of Worth, the podcast that empowers women to navigate life's challenges with strength and confidence. Today, we're diving into a critical topic: workplace bullying for women. Did you know that bullying in the workplace isn't always obvious? From verbal abuse and exclusion to micromanagement and even cyberbullying, these behaviors can deeply impact your mental health, career, and self-esteem. And here's the thing: it can happen to anyone, regardless of their role or industry. In this episode, we'll uncover the many faces of workplace bullying, share real-life stories of women who've faced it head-on, and provide actionable strategies to protect yourself and thrive in a respectful work environment. If you're ready to learn how to recognize bullying, take back control, and build a supportive professional network, this episode is for you. And remember, we're here for you every step of the way. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you. What workplace challenges or topics would you like us to cover in future episodes? Drop your ideas in the comments below. Your voice matters. Let's jump in and explore how women can stand strong and thrive in the workplace, even in the face of bullying.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be looking into something that's unfortunately pretty common: workplace bullying.
Yeah.
We're going to be exploring all the different forms it can take, what kind of impact it has on people, and most importantly, what you can do if you find yourself in that kind of situation.
Absolutely.
Whether you've experienced it firsthand, seen it happen to someone else, or just want to learn more about it, I think this deep dive is really going to give you some of that knowledge and those strategies you can use to get through these tough situations.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that bullying, it's not always super obvious, like shouting or aggression.
Right.
It can be subtle, sometimes even insidious, and it often kind of flies under the radar.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what makes a deep dive like this so important.
Right.
We have research and real stories from people to illustrate these really damaging effects of bullying.
Yeah.
So maybe let's start by kind of defining the different ways that it can show up.
Okay.
What are some of the most common forms?
Well, one very common form is verbal abuse. So this can be anything from straight up insults to just really harsh criticism or even public humiliation.
Oh, wow.
It's designed to kind of chip away at someone's confidence, make them question their abilities. Think of it as like a direct attack on someone's professional competence and self-worth.
Yeah, it's like you're going right for the jugular there.
Yeah.
We see this in Carla's story, right? The engineer who was constantly being put down by her supervisor.
Yes, exactly. Carla's supervisor would just publicly criticize all her ideas.
Oh, wow.
Even call them stupid in meetings.
Oh, geez.
Imagine like what that would do to your self-esteem and to your ability to just contribute to the team.
For sure.
It creates a climate of fear and really stifles creativity.
Yeah, and I think it's a classic example of how verbal abuse can just poison that whole work environment.
Absolutely.
But then there's also exclusion, which I think can be just as bad,
It really is.
even if it's not as in your face.
Right. Exclusion is about making someone feel like they just don't belong. And it can involve being left out of meetings, being left out of important decisions, or even social events.
Interesting.
It's a form of social isolation that can really affect someone's sense of belonging and also their professional value.
Yeah, and we saw this in Maya's story, right?
Yeah.
Where her team would have all these informal discussions without her.
Mm-hmm.
And they were essentially sidelining her from all those key decisions.
It's interesting about Maya's story, what she realized later was that this exclusion, it wasn't accidental.
Oh, wow.
It was actually deliberate, and it directly impacted her ability to do her job well. It's almost like a form of silent sabotage, wouldn't you say?
It's almost like they're trying to make her irrelevant, make it so she can't contribute.
Exactly.
And then there's the even more direct kind of sabotage, like undermining someone's work.
Yes. And that can take various forms. It can be things like giving someone pointless tasks or just flat out sabotaging their projects.
Yeah.
spreading rumors, spreading false information. All these things can damage someone's professional reputation. It's a direct attack on their credibility, their standing within the company.
Yeah, and we saw that with Priya, the analyst.
Yes.
A coworker was spreading lies about her performance just to undermine her, make her look bad.
It's a classic bullying tactic, and it's incredibly difficult to counter because it creates this cloud of suspicion, and it can be so hard to disprove. It's like you're always fighting an uphill battle just to regain trust and make people think highly of you again.
Yeah, it's like you're constantly trying to prove yourself.
Exactly.
And then we have micromanagement, which I think can really crush someone's confidence.
Oh, absolutely. Micromanagement, it's all about control
Okay.
and scrutiny. It's when someone is constantly being second guessed, never given the space to make their own decisions or really take ownership of their work. It can be so demoralizing, and it really stifles creativity.
Yeah, and I think we see that in Olivia's story, the designer.
Yeah.
Her manager wanted to approve every tiny little decision, even the really insignificant ones.
Oh, wow.
And that made her feel totally distrusted, and it really just blocked her creative flow.
It creates this dynamic where the person who's being micromanaged, they feel like they're walking on eggshells all the time,
Yeah, totally.
afraid to make even the smallest mistake. And it erodes their confidence, and it makes them really hesitate to take initiative.
Yeah, because they're afraid of being wrong.
Exactly.
They're afraid of being criticized. And then obviously there's sexual harassment, which is a whole other level of awful behavior.
Yeah. Sadly, this is still a problem in so many workplaces.
It is.
It can be inappropriate comments, unwanted advances, really anything that creates a hostile environment for somebody based on their gender.
Okay.
And it's about power, right? Using that power to intimidate someone, exploit them, or control them.
Yeah, and we see this in Nina's story.
Yeah.
She's a financial analyst. She had to deal with all these inappropriate comments from a colleague, and it would happen during team lunches.
Oh, gosh.
When she said she felt uncomfortable, they just dismissed her as being too sensitive.
That's such a typical response. It minimizes what the victim's going through.
Yeah.
Shifts the blame onto them.
Yeah.
It's just a way to silence the victim and make them doubt themselves.
And then finally, we have cyberbullying, which you can't really ignore these days, becoming so common, and it can be super sneaky and insidious.
Absolutely. And it takes bullying offline and puts it right into that digital world.
But what does it look like?
Well, it can be demeaning emails, social media posts, or even public attempts to discredit someone professionally.
Interesting.
And the problem is the digital space can really amplify the harm because it can reach so many more people and it's so much harder to control.
And it's harder to get away from.
Exactly.
You can't just leave the office and escape it. We saw this in Dana's story, right?
Yes.
The PR consultant. She was targeted with these anonymous emails, these horrible social media posts. And it really took a toll on her mental health and her reputation too.
Cyberbullying can be incredibly isolating.
Okay.
Because it can feel like the attacks are coming from everywhere. And it can be difficult to trace the perpetrator,
Yeah.
which can add to the feeling of helplessness.
So we've really covered a lot of ground just in defining what bullying is, the different types. And it really strikes me that every single type that we've talked about, it chips away at someone's confidence,
Yes.
makes them feel vulnerable.
Yeah.
So what kind of lasting impact does this have on the people who are targeted?
Well, the effects can be really far-reaching. Bullying can erode confidence, obviously. It can lead to setbacks in their career.
Makes sense.
And it can significantly impact their mental health. It can create this cycle of self-doubt and make it so hard for them to stand up for themselves.
So they might start to question their own abilities.
Yeah.
And then they might hesitate to take on new challenges or like pursue opportunities for growth.
Exactly. The fear of being targeted again can be totally paralyzing.
Oh, wow.
They might become withdrawn and avoid situations where they could be bullied again.
Yeah.
And that can limit their career progression and stifle their development.
So it's almost like they're being held back, not just by the bullying itself, but by all the fear and self-doubt that it creates.
Yeah.
What about the impact on mental health? We kind of touched on it earlier, but I'd love to go a little deeper.
Yeah, bullying can have a really deep impact on mental health. It can lead to anxiety, depression, low self-esteem. It can even make someone feel hopeless,
Oh, wow.
like they just want to give up.
Yeah.
It can make them feel like they're always on edge,
Okay.
waiting for the next attack.
Yeah, it sounds really draining, both emotionally and mentally. So if someone finds themselves in this kind of situation, what can they do? Where do they even start?
That's a great question. That's exactly what we're going to focus on in the next part of our deep dive. We're going to explore specific strategies to recognize the warning signs early on, document what's happening, and take action to protect yourself.
Okay, so it's all about recognizing those signs. Because knowledge is power, right?
Exactly.
When you understand what you're dealing with.
Right.
And you know what options you have.
Yes.
It can give you that power back.
You don't have to suffer in silence. There are ways to fight back, protect yourself, and create a much safer, more respectful work environment.
I love that. That's a really powerful message I think a lot of people need to hear. We just talked about all the different forms of workplace bullying and how much damage they can do. So now I think we should shift gears a little bit and talk about what you can actually do about it.
I think it's really empowering to remember that you have options. You don't have to just sit there and take it.
Yeah, you're not powerless.
You can be proactive. So let's dive into some actionable strategies our listeners can use to protect themselves.
Okay, love it. So where do we start? What's the first step?
Well, I'd say the first step is recognizing the signs.
Okay.
We've already gone over the different forms bullying can take, but the key is to be really aware of any behavior that makes you feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
Or undervalued or unsafe. Trust your gut feeling on this.
So if you consistently feel belittled, like you're being left out or like someone's trying to sabotage your work, that's a big red flag.
Exactly. Don't ignore those feelings. And this is where documentation becomes super important.
Okay.
You need to keep detailed records of everything that's happening.
Like what kind of things?
Dates, times, specific locations, who else was there to witness it, and any emails or messages or anything like that.
Okay, so keeping track of all the communication.
Yes, anything that could be evidence of a pattern of behavior. It can be so valuable if you end up deciding to report the bullying.
So even things that seem small, like a quick comment, those could be important down the line.
Absolutely. It's like creating a timeline of all the incidents. Remember Dana's case with the cyberbullying?
Yeah.
Those screenshots she took and then the IT department helping trace them, those were crucial in figuring out who was behind it.
That's such a good point. It shows how being proactive, like actually gathering evidence, can really make a difference.
Exactly. So let's say you've recognized the signs, you've documented the incidents. What do you do next?
Yeah, where do you go from there?
If you feel safe doing so, you could try aggressing the behavior directly with the person involved.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes just calling them out on it can be enough to make it stop.
Really? I guess it depends on the situation. But doesn't that seem kind of risky?
It can be.
What if it just makes things worse?
It's definitely a judgment call, and it totally depends on the situation, your relationship with that person. But sometimes a direct conversation can be surprisingly effective.
Oh, interesting.
Think back to Olivia's story.
Yeah.
She calmly explained to her manager how the micromanagement was affecting her work. And it actually opened a dialogue.
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe sometimes people don't even realize how their actions are coming across.
Right. They might not be aware of the impact.
So a conversation could be like a wake-up call for them.
Exactly. But of course, what if talking to them directly just isn't an option?
Yeah. Or if you try and it doesn't solve the problem.
Right. In that case, it's time to get HR or a trusted manager involved. Use your documentation to file a formal complaint. Clearly outline the behavior and how it's affecting you.
So if talking to the person one-on-one doesn't work, HR is the next step.
In most cases, yes. Remember what happened with Priya?
Yeah.
She was dealing with false accusations.
Right.
And she reported them to HR, presented all her evidence. It led to this team-wide discussion about the issue, and that actually helped to address it.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
It shows how a formal complaint can lead to some positive change.
Right.
But what if the bullying is coming from like a higher up?
Right.
Or what if HR doesn't take it seriously? I mean, that must be really disheartening.
Those are definitely valid concerns. If those internal channels fail or you just don't feel safe reporting it within the company, remember you have other options.
Okay.
You can seek external support.
Like what kind of support?
There are organizations that specialize in employment rights.
Yeah.
Or you could even talk to a lawyer.
Okay, so there are resources available outside the company to help you navigate that kind of situation.
Exactly. Carla's story is a perfect example. Her complaints were basically dismissed,
Oh, wow.
but she ended up working with an employment attorney, and she got a fair resolution in the end.
Interesting.
Sometimes you just need that outside perspective and legal expertise to really change things.
It sounds like having a good support network is super important too.
It's essential.
People you can trust, confide in,
Absolutely.
that can validate what you're going through.
Trusted colleagues can offer that emotional support.
Yeah.
They can advocate for you.
Right.
Remember Maya, connecting with her coworkers, the ones who recognized she was being excluded, that was a turning point for her.
Yeah. I bet just knowing you're not alone can be so empowering. But it's not just the professional side of things, right?
Right.
Bullying can have a big impact on your mental health too. So what can people do to protect themselves, to take care of their mental well-being?
Self-care is huge in these situations.
Okay.
You need to find things that help you de-stress and cope.
Like what kind of things?
It could be exercise, spending time in nature, any hobbies you enjoy, or maybe trying out some mindfulness techniques.
Yeah, it's like filling up your emotional tank.
Exactly. So you have the reserves to deal with those challenges. What about professional help, like therapy? Do you think that's something people should consider?
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you're really struggling, therapy or counseling can be incredibly beneficial.
Perfect.
A therapist can give you coping mechanisms, strategies for managing anxiety,
Right?
and help you work through the whole experience.
Yeah, it's like having a guide to help you navigate all that emotional turmoil. I think of Nina and how therapy helped her process all that trauma from being harassed.
Yes, it's a good example.
And it gave her tools to stand up for herself.
It's a good reminder that asking for help isn't a weakness.
Absolutely.
It's a sign of strength.
Yeah.
Therapy gives you that safe space to unpack those feelings and learn how to cope in a healthy way.
So we've been talking about all the things individuals can do.
Right.
But I think we need to talk about the bigger picture too.
Yeah.
What can be done on a larger scale, like within companies, to address workplace bullying
Yeah.
and create those safer work environments?
Yeah.
It feels like it's not just an individual problem, but it's something that organizations need to tackle head on.
You're absolutely right. It's not enough to just give individuals strategies.
Yeah.
We need to go deeper and address the root causes. Organizations, companies, they have a responsibility to create a culture of respect
Okay.
and to actually create structures that prevent bullying from happening in the first place.
So where do we start with that? What kind of changes can organizations make to create a more positive and supportive work environment?
A good place to start is with really clear, comprehensive anti-bullying policies.
Okay.
These policies should outline exactly what behavior is not okay, provide a clear process for reporting incidents, and ensure that there are consequences for anyone who's bullying others.
So it's like setting clear expectations and boundaries from the get-go.
Exactly. It sets the tone for what's acceptable in the workplace.
And it's not enough to just have these policies written down somewhere, right?
No, definitely not.
You actually have to enforce them
They need to be actively enforced
and make sure everyone knows about them.
and communicated to every single employee. Everyone needs to understand their rights and responsibilities when it comes to bullying.
So it's about making sure everyone knows the rules of the game and what happens if you break them. What else can organizations do beyond these policies?
Training programs are really important.
Okay.
They play a crucial role in educating employees about what bullying is, the different forms it can take,
Right.
and how vital it is to create a respectful and inclusive environment.
I like that.
These programs can give people the skills to recognize bullying behavior
Okay.
and to know what to do about it.
So it's about giving people the knowledge and tools to address bullying, whether they're the ones being targeted, they see it happening, or even if they're at risk of becoming a bully themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to create a culture where everyone feels empowered to speak up, to intervene when they see something that's wrong. And it goes beyond just policies and training.
Yeah. What else is there?
Organizations need to cultivate this culture of open communication and accountability.
What does that look like in a real workplace? You actually create that kind of open communication.
It starts with creating a space where employees feel safe to voice their concerns, to know they can speak up without fear of being punished for it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Every report of bullying should be taken seriously,
Okay.
and it should be investigated properly. It shows that the company is truly committed to safety and respect.
Yeah, it's about creating that culture of trust
Right?
where people feel confident that their concerns will be heard and addressed.
Exactly. Instead of brushing things under the rug,
Yeah.
it's about addressing them head on
Yeah.
and having those open conversations about respect and accountability.
So it's like moving from reacting to bullying when it happens to actually preventing it in the first place.
It's about shifting the whole mindset.
Yeah.
By encouraging open dialogue, promoting respect, and holding people accountable for their actions, organizations can create workplaces where everyone feels valued, supported, and empowered to thrive.
So it's not just about responding to bullying, but about changing the very fabric of the workplace.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels safe, respected, empowered to do their best work without the fear of being bullied or harassed. That's the ultimate goal.
I love that. We've covered so much in this deep dive.
We have.
From understanding the different forms of bullying to looking at what individuals can do and what organizations can do to create safer workplaces.
Yeah.
So as we start wrapping up, what are some of the key takeaways you want our listeners to remember? We've really explored so much when it comes to workplace bullying, all the different ways it can show up, the effects it has, and what people can do both as individuals and within their organizations to create safer work environments.
It's been a deep dive for sure.
But before we finish up, I want to talk about something I think is super important,
Okay.
and that's knowing your own worth.
It's such a good point. Bullying, it can really damage your self-esteem.
Yeah.
Make you doubt your abilities, your value. You start to wonder if you're good enough.
Right.
And it's really important to remember that the bully's behavior, it's a reflection of them, not you. Their actions, they're coming from their own insecurities, their own issues.
So it's not about you at all. But still, it's easy to take those negative messages to heart.
Oh, absolutely.
How do you hold on to your self-worth when you're facing that constant negativity?
It takes effort, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's definitely possible. One thing that can help is focusing on your strengths,
Okay.
your accomplishments.
So like making a list of all the good things.
Exactly. Remind yourself of your skills, your achievements, all those positive contributions you've made. It's about reclaiming your own story.
So it's like you're countering the bully's narrative
Right.
with all this evidence of how awesome you are.
You got to shift your focus from their negativity to all the positive stuff about you.
I love that.
And surround yourself with people who support you, who see your value, appreciate you. Build a network of allies who can lift you up, remind you of your worth, especially when you're feeling down.
And speaking of supportive people, I think it's really important to acknowledge the role of bystanders.
Yes.
People who see bullying happening but might not be directly involved.
Right.
What can they do to help create a safer workplace?
Bystanders are so important. They can choose to be allies, to actually speak up against the bullying, support the person who's being targeted. Even small things can make a huge difference. Just offering a kind word, just being present for someone, letting them know they're not alone.
So it's about sending this message that bullying won't be tolerated, that it's everyone's responsibility to step in, protect people. And it's about creating that culture of support and accountability we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, silence, it can almost be seen as agreeing with the bully. But when you speak up, you're sending a clear message that this behavior is wrong and that you're standing with the victim. And that can empower other people to speak up too.
I love that. It's like creating this ripple effect.
Exactly.
So it's about shifting the power dynamic away from the bully and back to the group.
It's about standing together.
Yeah. So we've talked about a lot today,
We have.
but I think the biggest takeaway is hope and knowing that you're not powerless.
Absolutely. You're not alone. There are resources out there, people who care, and strategies that can really help.
Yeah.
By creating a culture of respect, empathy, and accountability, we can build workplaces where everyone feels valued, supported, and empowered to thrive.
I love that. And to our listeners, we hope you take what you've learned today and apply it to your own lives, your own workplaces.
Yeah.
Whether you've experienced bullying, witnessed it, or just want to be part of the solution, your actions, they really do matter.
They do.
And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, any suggestions you have for future deep dives we could do on workplace stuff. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with anyone who might find it helpful. And until next time, stay empowered.
Absolutely.